Breaking news in the NFL, and it is bad news for the Cleveland Browns. Our Jonathan Jones reporting that QB Deshaun Watson suffered a ruptured Achilles in Sunday's loss to the Bengals. That means he'll miss the remainder of this season, but JJ going on to say that if all goes well, he could be ready for week 1 of next season. As for this year's Browns, they are now 1-6 heading into next week's game against the Ravens. We mentioned JJ's reporting, so of course we would now bring him in to talk with us here on HQ. And of course, JJ, this is really just confirmation of the news that we were expecting for quite some time now, that it is that ruptured Achilles.
That's right. Excuse me. That's right. You see one of these and you kind of know exactly what it is. You saw the reverberation of the calf. And after what we lived in week 1 last year with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, it's really a telltale sign. And you saw the emotion on Deshaun Watson's face, the tears when he was on the cart, the teammates gathering around him. Kevin Stefanski saying that was the fear. And of course, that is what the MRI today confirmed. So his season is obviously done for this year. Depending upon what procedure he gets, the speed bridge like Aaron Rodgers got, or the more traditional Achilles repair, will determine his return to play. It will not be this season, but it could be a 4 to 5 month recovery. It could be the more traditional 8 to 9 month recovery. But no matter, he should be able to, with successful surgery, be able to play in week 1, or at least be ready to play by week 1. I take you back last year to Kirk Cousins, who suffered his torn Achilles in week 8. And then had the traditional repair very shortly thereafter. And then he was ready to play week 1. Didn't look that great in week 1, obviously a couple years older than Deshaun Watson is today. But that's a very recent example of how someone around this time can have this surgery and still be ready to go for the 2025 season.
So let's look ahead to 2025 and assume that Deshaun Watson is ready for week 1. Do you expect him to still be a member of the Browns? And if so, do you think he'll be able to compete for the starting job? Like, where do we stand with things moving forward?
I don't see how he's not a member of the Cleveland Browns, Zach, and it's a great question. And if we had discussed this before the injury, then perhaps, right? I mean, perhaps he wouldn't be a Cleveland Brown, but now you have the injury. And look, the Browns owe him $46 million over the next couple of years. It's guaranteed. His cap number for next year is nearly $73 million. And look, you can't release him. Certainly you can't release him before June the 1st, because he's going to take up something like 70 to 80% of the cap. If you do it after June 1st as a release, he's still counting against the cap $73 million. And so it just doesn't make financial sense to do that. One potential that people had discussed with me over the past couple of weeks, if the Browns wanted to get out of the contract, would be to trade him somewhere and send along a number of draft picks, so that what you would essentially be doing is a team would be buying out his contract, right? Here's some draft picks, take this off of our hands. If that were ever possible, with the player Deshaun Watson, with the accusations and the settlements behind him, all of those things, if a team were to have considered that, it is impossible to imagine they would be considering that moving forward with him now coming off of this Achilles. So the Browns now have a number of options for themselves. They have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the second-year quarterback, who has injured his hand. Not entirely sure he's going to be ready to go this week. And so it would be Jameis Winston there for them this upcoming week. But beyond that, and looking into next year, the Browns right now are destined for a top 10, top 5, top 3 perhaps pick in the 2025 draft. Maybe there is a quarterback in the first round that they could be interested in. As the quarterback carousel begins to spin this offseason, perhaps there's someone that they could get who would be a cheap option, right? Look at what the Steelers did, where the Denver Broncos are paying the overwhelming majority of Russell Wilson's contract, and they are just paying him the vet minimum. Perhaps something like that comes along for the Browns. And then Deshaun Watson, as he rehabs and recovers from that surgery, would be able to compete for the starting job, either with a rookie, perhaps Dorian Thompson-Robinson plays well when he's able to come back, or someone that they sign in veteran free agency come March. So any of those options certainly on the table for the Browns, but it does make it, looking ahead, easier for the Browns because of the injury to bring in someone else, whereas with the established starter Deshaun, we remember they were not able to do that, bring back Joe Flacco last year because of the narrative that would surround the team. So that wouldn't be the case in 2025.
So do you not feel like there's maybe a chance for Jameis Winston to assert himself, assuming that if he's able to play this coming weekend, and him be a part of that conversation maybe of the Browns' plans moving forward?
He would have to play a lot better than he did in the preseason and at practice, Zach, because truly, I had folks tell me maybe he was QB2, but maybe he should have been QB3 these last couple weeks. And then, of course, Kevin Stefanski making the decision ahead of Sunday's game to make him the emergency third quarterback. So he was inactive for the game. The only way that he could come into the game is if the top two quarterbacks got injured. That's what happened. And so he clearly wasn't playing well enough to not only be the starter and replace Deshaun, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson had outplayed him in practice. So now he has to go out there and show them what he has not shown them over the last several months in order to work his way into that conversation next year.
Do you think Kevin Stefanski lands past all of this situation? Is he safe? Because you see the wins and losses are not pretty. The schedule is not pretty moving forward. Is he okay, and do you think he'll remain to be the guy in Cleveland?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of folks around the league ask and talk about. I'm faced with that question from a number of sources around the league with all the mounting losses. Would the Cleveland Browns and Jimmy Haslam ultimately part ways with Kevin Stefanski and or general manager Andrew Berry? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't have a crystal ball, but it is a question that a number of folks are certainly asking. Here's what I do know. They both, the head coach and GM, signed contract extensions this past offseason. Kevin Stefanski is a two-time coach of the year. There are a number of other issues with these Cleveland Browns, which could, point to coaching, could point to the general manager and the personnel staff. The defense is not playing up to its standard, though they did play well against the Cincinnati Bengals. You have a quarterback who, I know Deshaun had a really rough stretch on the field this season, but you look at the numbers, I think he only had 2 incompletions yesterday before the Achilles tear. So he was playing decent ball. They got Nick Chubb back. They've had a number of injuries along the offensive line. And so, look, could they change play caller and ultimately hand play calling duties over to Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator? Perhaps. There are a number of things that could happen with these Browns that do not involve firing the head coach or firing the general manager. We're still certainly way too early to make any of those determinations. But those questions around the league are certainly being asked, and we'll just have to wait and see as this season plays out.
I want to go back to some of the happenings from yesterday's game when Deshaun Watson went down and we saw him there on the ground being taken away, and the fans there in Cleveland not being, how do I say it, very pleasant towards Watson. I'd say they were taking him off, cheering, and maybe happy that their QB was injured. And, of course, Browns players not happy about that and letting that frustration be known after the game. We'll play some of that sound.
I am very upset with the reaction to a man that has had the world against him for the past 4 years, and he put his body and life on the line for this city every single day, regardless of your perception, regardless of what you thought should happen with him. He committed every single day that I've been here to be the best that he can be for this team.
No one deserves that. I've seen him work his ass off to, get back here, and put a smile on his face, and, try to put everything that's outside the facility behind him. Death threats, people come to his house, people, going after his family. No, like I said, no one deserves that.
Oh yeah, no, that was bull. Yeah, I noticed it right away. I mean, no matter what you feel about a player, performance-wise or not, you don't boo a guy that's down, that can't get up by himself. So yeah, that was bull. So any fan that said anything, it's bull. That simple. Like, you don't do that. Like I said, whether the guy's playing well or not, whether you're a fan favorite, whether you're anything, you don't boo a guy that's sitting down. So, yeah, that's
JJ, obviously that the locker room has Deshaun Watson's back, but what do you make of just that whole scene that we saw with the rift between the fans and obviously the players?
You know, fans are going to be fans, right? And so we can't necessarily, I would not conduct a thesis on fan behavior because I think that would be not worth anyone's time. You know, Deshaun was getting booed when they made player introductions to start the game. And I know the Browns probably wanted that nice pop for Nick Chubb making his return, so they couldn't introduce as an entire team. So you go individually on offense, and the crowd before the game, before any injury, let Deshaun Watson know generally what they thought of him. I would certainly agree with all the players in terms of you never, ever, ever should root for, should cheer for any sort of injury for anyone. That's a really bad human thing to do, in my opinion. So everything else, and you know, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I feel you. I think we all understand what you're picking up and putting down at the same exact moment. Just a situation that you don't want to see, a situation that will still be ever evolving with Deshaun Watson as he now begins this rehab journey to come back from that torn Achilles. Jonathan Jones, thank you so much for your time and truly appreciate it. And we know we can get you on NFL Today, Sundays at noon Eastern, to get you ready for those weekend games, always on CBS. Make sure you tune in with the crew led by JB and the rest of the gang.